Katharine Drexel was born in Philadelphia on November 26, 1858, the same year as the apparitions at Lourdes. Her father was Francis Anthony Drexel, an internationally known banker and one of the richest men in America. Katharine's childhood was idyllic. Along with her siblings, she was given a first-class education in languages, literature, philosophy, music, and painting. She lived in a sumptuous mansion in Philadelphia, and she summered with her family at a lovely country estate outside the city. Her father and stepmother, her mother had died just after her birth, were both devout Catholics. They had a chapel in their home, and their father repaired to it for prayer every day after work. Also, 3 afternoons a week, her parents would throw open their home to the poor and those in need. The Drexels drilled into their children the conviction that their wealth had been entrusted to them and was destined, therefore, to be used for the common good. When she was 14, Katharine met a man who would exert a decisive influence on her life, Father James O'Connor. They would have met here at the Drexel summer home. You can see it right behind me. It's now part of a busy and sprawling hospital complex in Philadelphia. Katharine was already exhibiting signs of great spiritual seriousness, and under O'Connor's direction, she actually laid out a program for growth in holiness. Pretty heady stuff for a teenage girl. In 1878, when she was 20, her formal education ended, and in January of 1879, she was presented to Philadelphia high society. Now, you would think for someone of that time and of her social class, that would have been a very important event. Katharine Drexel, frankly, was rather bored and nonplussed by it all. Soon afterward, and within a few months of each other, Katharine's beloved father and stepmother died, and she found herself inheriting a fortune of money. She and each of her sisters received $4 million from their father's estate, probably closer to $400 million in our terms. But Katharine was unsettled. She didn't know quite what to do with this money or what to do with her life. At this point, 2 other extraordinary men came to see her. One was Bishop Martin Marty, the other was Father Joseph Stephan. They were both involved in the Catholic Indian mission, the church's outreach to Native Americans. They described their work so eloquently that Katharine was inspired to give a large part of her fortune to this work. She even ventured west with them to see the fruit of her donation. The first connections with the work of missioners to the Native Americans coincided with a period of great inner turmoil. Following the deaths of her parents, Katharine's health took a turn for the worse, and she was plunged into a period of anxiety and indecision. She was struggling to find her purpose in life. She did what a number of wealthy Americans at the time did in such circumstances. She went to Europe to take the baths, to go to a series of resorts and spas. On this trip, Katharine had another life-changing encounter. At the end of her European sojourn, Katharine had an audience with Pope Leo XIII. Still mourning the death of her parents, still emotionally distraught, still trying to find her path in life, she knelt before the Pope. She spoke to him of her passion for the Indian mission, and she said, "Holy Father, you must find an order of priests or nuns to send, to teach and to catechize and to love these good people." The Pope fixed her with his gaze, and he said, "You should be that missionary." The Pope's words cut Katharine to the soul. She said she felt sick all over. She couldn't get out of the Vatican fast enough, and when she was outside, she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. The Pope had obviously struck a nerve. It also served to focus her desire. She began to wonder whether God was calling her to be a nun, perhaps even the founder of a religious order, one dedicated to the poorest and most forgotten of Americans. When she informed her spiritual director, he was, at first, reticent. How could this coddled and well-educated aristocrat, accustomed to the finest things, accept the severe discipline of a religious life? But in time, he relented, and Katharine entered the novitiate of the Sisters of Mercy of Pittsburgh in May of 1889. 2 years later, she made her final profession as the first member of the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament for Indians and colored people. From the beginning, Katharine managed to attract a large number of young women eager to share her life. They gathered at the Mother House outside of Philadelphia and spent 3 years in formation and training before they set out for missionary work. One of their first outposts was among the Pueblo Indians of New Mexico. Next, they set up a school for African American children along the James River in Virginia. Perhaps Mother Drexel's most important foundation followed. Xavier University in New Orleans as a center for advanced studies for black young people, a place and purpose unheard of at the time. Where did the money come from for all these works and undertakings? Well, it came from Katharine's trust fund, that money given to her by her father. Katharine gave and gave and gave until there was no more to give, utterly spending herself in service of her mission. Was this justice? Oh, so much more than that. Was it extraordinary justice? So much more than that. It was justice elevated, transfigured, rendered luminescent by grace. Christ had so seized Katharine Drexel's life that she now became a living icon of his presence. It's in that her sanctity consists. For many years, Katharine directed the work of her community. She traveled widely all over the country, visiting her sisters, at a time when travel was quite difficult. On one of her trips in 1935, she suffered a heart attack. The doctors told her unless she curtailed her schedule, she wouldn't survive. So Katharine Drexel entered into what she took to be the most spiritually productive period of her life, the last 20 years, when here in this place, in this Mother House, every day before the Blessed Sacrament, she prayed for the success of her order. Mother Drexel died on March the 3rd, 1955. But her work goes on, her spirit lives on in her community and their works all over the world. This great spirit of elevated, transfigured justice. I want to recover the sense of spiritual heroism, that we should want to be saints. We should want to be a saint, and don't settle for second best, for a second or third rate spiritual life. No, I want to be a great saint. That's what you've been designed for. And in fact, all of us, Evelyn Waugh said this, he said, all of us, when we get to heaven, if we get there, will all be saint so-and-so, because only saints live in heaven. So, now it might be through a long process of purification in this life and the life to come, but nevertheless, when you get to heaven, by God, you're a saint. And so that's what we're all aspiring to be, as saints. See, and that's why I tell people, that's a cool thing and a good thing to want, and to want it with all your heart. You know, say, well, I want to be the most famous person in the world. Well, that's stupid. I want to be the wealthiest person in the world. That's a waste of time. But I want to be a saint with all my heart. Off you go. That's a great thing to desire.